crazy? Boom, Vanessa is in the house. What's up, dude? What's going on?
Hey, hey! Thanks for having me, April. I appreciate you reaching out to
Man,
me.
it's been really cool. We started this new group. It's called Survivors Rock, a breast cancer constituent community. And it's been a really cool outreach that I've been wanting to do for a long time. Ever since I was diagnosed, I wanted to reach out to other breast cancer survivors and share common stories and experiences. And so when we started this group, like I think it was like a month, maybe a month and a half ago, I invited you to it because you and I are old friends, and in fact, you might be my oldest friend on that page when I think about it, because we met like in
Oh,
yeah, dude,
wow.
we met in like it was like 1998 or something. I think was that right?
It was 99. Casey and I have been together 21
Wow.
years, and so you guys were gigging in the same
Yeah,
circles.
it's
So,
crazy. And so yeah,
long
Vanessa and
time.
we've been friends for a while, and then we kind of drifted apart, and then I guess it was like I don't know 7 years ago, 6 years ago that we reconnected, and we both learned that we had each gone through breast cancer in the time we were apart. It was kind of crazy, right? I
Very
know.
crazy.
So, I know we talked about it before, but it's been some time. Tell everybody out there who's watching right now how you learned that you had breast cancer.
It's actually a kind of a interesting story. You go about the life, you're doing your everyday thing, and Casey and and Casey's my spouse. Uh, as I said earlier, we've been together 21 years. We were sitting in our bedroom. She was on the bed, and I was sitting on an ottoman, and we were just chit chatting. And I just had an itch on my breast, and I went to scratch it. And I felt this lump that had not been there before. And then I was like, okay, that's kind of weird. And then Casey saw my expression on my face, and she's like, what? And I'm like, I'm feeling a lump. And so I had her to feel it too. And she was like, I don't like the feel of that, the way that feels. And I said, okay. She goes, you need to call first thing tomorrow morning, um, and make an appointment. I was like, okay. And it was about that time, for my annual and stuff. So I called my OBGYN at the time, and I went and visited him, and he told me to go ahead and he's going to schedule me a mammogram. And keep in mind, I was 36 years old at the time. Typically, women weren't getting their mammograms until 40, 45. So, and he goes, if nothing else, you'll have a baseline. So when it's time for you to start having those regular mammograms. And the whole time I'm thinking it's nothing. It's just something weird. And uh, went and had the mammogram. A couple days later, he calls me and he said, I'm going to send you to a breast specialist. He goes, the results came back as probably benign. And he goes, I just remember this clearly. He goes, there's no probably to it. It either is or it isn't. So he wanted me to see a breast
Wow.
specialist.
Yeah.
And a couple days, yeah. So I went and saw the breast specialist, and even her, there's no
Right.
family history of breast cancer. Uh, I'm 36 years old. There was nothing to indicate that it would be anything more than maybe a cyst or just something weird. And I went, she felt it and she was like, well, why don't we try and drain the fluid out of it to see what happens? So she went in and drained the fluid. And when she drained the fluid, it was clear, another indication that nothing serious. And then the lump went away. So she said, just monitor it for the next couple of months and then tell me, if you see anything different or it changes or it comes, let me
This
know.
was all when you were 30.
So this was in
You were
March
36 years old. Yeah. That
36.
is young, and I think we talked about it
Right.
before. When I was diagnosed, I was 41, and that's considered young. So 36 is even way younger
Hmm.
because it's a lot more common for breast cancer to crop up when you're in menopause, when you're later in life. So that's why it's weird. So anyway,
Right.
sorry, continue.
No, and a couple months, because this was in March of 2008 when we first discovered the lump. We had gone camping in late May, and we were sitting at the campsite, And it was that time, my monthly cycle was coming in, and my breasts were feeling tender. And so I was like sitting there, and I was actually holding my breast because they were so sore. And I felt the lump. And I was like, okay, that's weird. And then I, did a self check, and then I found a second lump that was bigger than the first lump. And so I had Casey check it out with me. And of course, we were both kind of like, well, you started your cycle. Maybe you're just swollen, and, different glands are swelling up. So we waited another couple weeks, once my period was done and over with. And I self checked, and she was there with me, and both lumps were still there.
Wow,
So made the
that's a
appointment.
scary point when that happens. When you like, as you progress through, when you're talking through back through your breast cancer journey, it's like there's all these points where you're just like you get kind of more and more anxious, and to have that happen, especially at that age, that's terrifying.
Right. And in the back of my mind, I'm still thinking, oh, this is nothing, so go back to the breast specialist, and she felt the second lump, and she goes, wow, that's quite a bit bigger. She goes, let me see if I can drain fluid out of that. And I'm laying on the table, and she went to go drain the fluid, and it was like in a split second, her whole demeanor changed. She said, I can't get any fluid out. I'm going to do a biopsy
Wow,
right
and
here.
was this like at
And
a
I was kind of,
like a clinic, or was it at a hospital?
yeah, it was at Texas Oncology in Bedford. There's a group of Texas breast specialists. Dr. Mary Bryan is the breast surgeon, and then Dr. Leah Craco was my
Gotcha.
oncologist. She came into the picture, a couple weeks later. But so I'm laying there, and so she went ahead and did the biopsy, and you know, just the way her demeanor, it was like, okay, shit probably just hit the fan. But I'm still being optimistic and thinking, I'm 36, no family history. It's going to come back as nothing. And on July 2nd, 2008, I had 15 minutes left of my shift at work. My cell phone rings. I see it's the doctor's office. So I picked it up, went to a conference room, and the voice on the other line said, Vanessa, it's Dr. Bryan. And I knew right then and there I had cancer,
Wow.
because there's only one reason why the doctor themselves
Right.
call you.
Right. Holy cow! And you said that was July what day again?
July
So that's
2nd,
that's coming up
2008.
next Thursday, a week from tomorrow, right? Your anniversary.
Yes, my 12-year.
Wow.
Yes.
Wow. Crazy. So from that point, God, you're at work. Did you have to then drive home after that? I mean, ugh.
Yeah, yeah. Dr. Bryan, she was asked me. She goes, "How soon can you be at my office?" And I said, "How soon do you want me there?" She goes, "Tomorrow morning at 8:30." Said, "I'll be there." So I got off the phone. Of course, I'm in tears, and my whole thought is, how the hell am I supposed to call KZ and tell her this? This is just not. So I called her, told her, and she said, "Meet me at home." It's like, okay. So I went back to work, found one of our managers, because my manager had already left for the day. So I found another manager and told him what my phone call was about, and that I was leaving for the day. And I only worked 15 miles from the house. So, but that 15 miles, that drive was probably one of the longest drives I've ever had, because so many thoughts are in your
I
mind.
can't
I
even
mean, I
imagine
know.
driving right after getting that news. I mean, I was lucky enough to be at home, but I can't imagine like you know it's another thing because like some people are like, well, they should call you and tell you to come in, but when they do that, then too. It's like a no-win situation. So
Hmm.
sometimes they just have to tell you over the phone, but I can't even imagine. Like I said, I was at home and I was really thankful because I would have been afraid even to drive because you're so overwhelmed.
Right. So I got home, and of course, Casey hadn't made it home yet. So then I was in the house, just what do I do? I've got to have something to do. So I called my younger sister who lived out in California, and I told her, of course, there's tears and everything, and then of course, I'm fortunate enough that my family and friends have a wicked sense of humor. So my sister was like, "Well, shit, you just totally ruined my life." And I'm like, "What are you talking about? I'm the one who just got diagnosed." And she goes, "Now I have to check that stupid little box about family history and does anyone in your family had breast
You made
cancer?"
it hard on her now.
So then yeah. So I said, of course, we both started laughing, and she calmed my nerves until Casey was able to get home.
Wow. That's, it's every single story is different about how people find out. I was talking to somebody recently. They said that they were like at the mall in a changing room or something, and that's when they got the call. It's like
Hmm.
another one of those moments in time where you'll always remember exactly where you were, what happened, what they said. You remember that day is like imprinted on your head. So from that point,
Hmm.
I know like for me, when I was first diagnosed, they can't really fully stage it till they know, what's in there. They got to go in, or they can
Right.
kind of estimate based on imagery and stuff like that. But for me, surgery was first in my case, based on my stage, my assumed stage, and the size of it, and all that jazz. And then I had chemo. So, what was your first step? Did you have surgery or chemo, or what was the first, line of defense for you?
I was HER2 positive, so I started with Herceptin, and then a week after my first treatment of Herceptin, I started chemo. We opted to do surgery last. I actually went through a trial with my oncology team because typically most protocols at the time, in 2008, you would have surgery first, but the Herceptin and this particular, they were looking for people to do a trial to do medications and then have surgery afterwards because the thought was, let's see how much we can shrink the tumors before you have to go into
Right, and I've
surgery.
actually learned that that's
And
become a
actually,
lot.
right.
That's a lot more common is people to have the chemo
Hmm.
first and the surgery later. And what I've read is part of it is that they want to make the tumor smaller before the surgery, so it's easier to get all
Hmm.
of it, which is interesting. And in my case,
Right.
it was already small, and so they felt that they could get it all at once. But more people than not that I talked to are actually have had the surgery after the chemo, and it kind of freaked me out for a while at first because I was like,
Hmm.
wait, are they making a mistake on me or what? But everybody's different in every scenario. To your
You're right.
point.
Yeah, and I was actually diagnosed stage one. But what was interesting is they reclassified it after my surgery because the tumor is actually bigger than what it was than it showed up on the original imagery. The tumor itself, come to find out, was more egg shaped and it was kind of growing inward instead of outward. So the tumor was originally bigger than it thought. So it was reclassified after the surgery to be stage two cancer.
Wow, see that's crazy, and people don't realize that either. That you might be staged one thing at one point and something else later. I know a lot of people who are going
Hmm.
through cancer right now, or some people who are going through cancer now that have found out that it was further along than they originally thought, and things like that. So there's so many pieces and
Hmm.
parts to all of it. So when you went through chemo, you lost your hair and all that. So you're one of the
I
people. I
did.
remember when you told me this, I was like, that's so cool. Like your hair used to be long, and then when you went through chemo, yeah, you
Super
went through
long.
chemo and you got your short haircut, and then you just kind of dug it and stuck with it, right?
For the most part, because of course I already knew from day one I was not going to do the wig thing. So I was doing ball caps and bandanas. And then, of course, after you go through treatment and my hair started growing back, it was crazy because my hair, when is naturally wavy, and when it started growing back, it started growing back solid white and really, really curly. So I was like, okay, this is interesting. And after over time, the dark was coming back in, and then it was the curls were settling and it was going back to its more natural wave. And of course, when you go through, once you finally get somewhat of a clean bill of health, my whole thought was, I just want to go back to normal. So I wanted my long hair back. So I started letting it grow out. And then I realized, I constantly kept it up in a ponytail. I was constantly hot. Chemo brings on the hot flashes, and having long hair on top of I just realized, I was like, you know what? Life was so much easier when I had no hair or when it was really short. So I let my hair grow out long enough to where I could donate it to Locks of Love. And then I went to my hairdresser and had it in a ponytail, and they cut the ponytail off so I could cut it or donate it. And then I've kept it short ever
That's so
since.
true, man. I remember when I went through chemo, how easy and how simple everything was as far as grooming, because like chemo, you like lose all your hair. At least I did. I lost like after Taxol, I lost
I
all
did.
hair anywhere, nose hair, eyebrows, eyelashes.
Hmm.
My skin was like baby soft, like just so soft. And like take a shower and you're like in and out, just like you're just like, woo woo, and it took no time. And I kind of embraced that whole simplicity of things, and it sort of was nice to have something
Right.
that was simple during a time that was kind of complicated.
Right. Not having to shave your armpits, not having to shave your legs. I mean, there was a little bit of benefit,
Yeah, it feels weird to
going
say
through
that,
chemo.
but there
As
was. It's true.
And one of the other benefits I teased about is when I was on chemo, I did not get bit by
Really?
mosquitoes. So really, so we'd be sitting outside or something, and everybody's slapping at themselves, killing the mosquitoes, and that was probably another benefit I think I had with the chemo is I didn't have to worry about mosquitoes.
I remember when I would sweat that it would like kind of smell almost sweet or something. Like it was there was like this different smell to my sweat during chemo. And then, oh, do you remember? Because did you do adriamycin cytoxin at all? I know you said you were on like a trial, but did you do that at all?
Yeah, I'll be honest. When it came to the research and memorizing all the medications and all that I had, that went in one ear out the other because I was more Casey was more of the research, so she could probably rattle all that off. My mind was just whatever it takes to make me better.
Yeah,
I don't want to die,
like well, you were
just
focused
so
probably.
I put all my energy into
Hmm.
right. So I'll be honest, I'm really bad when it
Well,
comes to the medications. I mean, I know that, I had the Herceptin and I went through 6 months of chemo. There was a time, the first half of the chemo treatments were pretty rough. And then the second half, we called it chemo light. It wasn't as bad, but I was still had so many side effects to the chemo that it was like the more chemo I was getting into me, whether it was the hard stuff or the light stuff, it was just I kept losing my energy and just being
yeah,
drained out all the
it's
time.
exhausting. It really is exhausting. It's true. Did you have to do like a shot a few days after your chemo to keep up your white blood cell counts? Yeah.
Yes,
And I remember that actually
yes.
caused me more grief than just about anything because it caused my bones to ache so severely that I was having to take so much
Hmm.
pain medication. Well, Advil, but like way more than says you could take on the bottle. The doctor was telling me they're like take 12 a day or so.
Right.
I don't remember what it was. Nobody do that, but it was some enormous amount of Advil to take to try to help my bone pain through that time, and that was sort of a surprise. But the adriamycin is the one that they also refer to as the Red Devil. So it's the red one that a lot of
Hmm.
women get, and people may not know this, but whenever you have that injected, for the next little while when you go to the bathroom, you pee red. It's just like red. It looks like it looks
Yes.
like you took like a bottle of food coloring and dumped it in the toilet of red food coloring. It's kind of creepy and weird.
Well, it's interesting. Yeah. Well, and then also, with all the diagnostics in the beginning and the testing, I went and did for a bone scan, and they had made me drink some nasty crap, and then they had to inject blue dye in me. So I peed blue for a couple
No
of days after
way.
that, and then I
Uh,
get that shot, and then that was peeing red. Later on in chemo, it's like your
you're like the
body.
unicorns that they show
That's one
that like are
thing
throwing
that
up rainbows or something.
exactly. I mean, it's bad enough that a person has to, go through the
Right.
treatment itself, but all the other side effects and everything else that happens to your body. I mean, I don't think anybody can give you enough warnings or play by play on what's going to
Yeah.
happen because first off, everybody's bodies are different and react differently. I thought I was in the clear because everybody kept saying, "Oh, your days 3 and 4 after my very first chemo treatment were going to be my hardest days." And I went through days 3 and 4, and I'm like, oh, good. Maybe I'll be one of the ones that chemo is not going to really have that much of an effect on me. Oh, hell no. Days
Yeah.
5 and 6, I was laid out on the couch. I couldn't tell you
It isn't that weird because
anything. I was so
it's
sick.
totally true though, because like you said, it affects everybody different. I mean, it's some major drugs they're putting in you, and you just don't know how it's gonna affect you compared to the next person. You might have neuropathy, you might lose your hair, you might not lose your hair. You know all these different things. I had the skin on my feet was just peeling off during chemo. I remember. Sometimes I would get rashes on my hands and stuff like that. And you're right, there's not enough play by play at all. Like my fingernails changed color; they went like to a darker brown. But
Mhm.
did you like have any long term effects from chemo or anything like that?
For the longest time, I couldn't drink out of a metal can because it tasted like chemo to me. When I was going through chemo, I constantly had that metallic taste in my mouth, and I lived off of York peppermint patties to help kind of kill out that taste. Now I've kind of overcome that, but it took, I would say, probably a good 6 years after chemo before I started drinking out of a can. Grab a can of
Yeah,
Coke, and it tasted
that's weird,
normal.
man.
I think the
Go
longest
ahead.
So I think the longest side effects I have is more on the emotional side because like here's my 12-year anniversary coming up, and sometimes I look back and it's like it still feels like yesterday that it happened. And then there's times that I have looked back and it's like it happened so long ago, like it was another
Yeah,
lifetime ago. So the emotional roller coaster, I don't think anybody can really ever get away
yeah,
from. Um, and I don't know, I know a lot of people with for the something that I've struggled with is actually survivor's guilt because I know folks who have also been diagnosed with cancer and breast cancer and that have passed away. And then there's always in the back of my mind is how come I didn't die? And I know I should, and I try to keep my mind away from there, but at the same time, it goes there when I start hearing of those that do die from it. And so I think the longest side effects I have are the emotional side effects.
that's a really good point. You know, a lot of people aren't even aware that survivor's guilt is a thing, but it totally is, and especially I meet a lot of people. I mean, we all meet a lot of people, but with breast cancer can stick it. I especially meet a lot of breast cancer survivors, and anytime you know somebody who's a friend or that I've become friends with or whatever tells me that they've it's come back or whatever, it's just like it's such a it's just it's hard to put into words clearly. I mean, it's like a kick in the gut. You're just like you just want everyone to be okay, and you want everyone to not have to go through
Mm-hmm.
the horrible hardships that breast cancer can bring. And that's kind of bringing it full circle. That's what makes that the group that we're in, Survivors Rock, a breast cancer constituent community. It's a new breast cancer survivor group. If anybody's out there that knows a breast cancer survivor, if you're a breast cancer survivor, be sure and join. They've got the link pinned in the comments below. But it's a great opportunity to share those conversations and have a safe place to do that. I know right now Jennifer is watching. She said hello to you, by the way, Vanessa, a little bit ago, and that she said she ate. She said she
I
ate peppermint patties too all the time as well, and that she never wore a wig or a scarf. or I'm sorry, she never wore a wig, but she bought a ton of caps and scarves, so she feels you there. But it's good to be able to share those conversations and those experiences with other breast cancer survivors. And I think that there's a reason that each of us goes through the different experiences that we have, and I feel that part of it is this right here, being able to share that with other people, whether it's going through stage 1 or stage 4 or anything in between. I think that we have a responsibility to share what going through this is like, so that people understand that it's something that needs attention, that we know that there's a lot of pink all of the time and all the breast cancer organizations and things like that, but it's a constant thing that we need to try to work together to solve, and try to find a cure one day. So that's really what this is all about, is fighting to cure breast cancer one day. That's the dream anyway, right?
Right.
So, is there any one thing that you can think of that you're like, after going through breast cancer, this is the one big takeaway, like a big positive takeaway that you can think of after going through breast cancer?
Just reevaluating and looking at things differently. Most people, they all start off, doing their thing and living life in the fast lane, and then when you're hit with a diagnosis like that, is definitely life changing, and it makes you reevaluate where you put your time. I know Casey and I, one of the things that we did is we started purging the negativity in our life, whether it was people or our surroundings. It's who has time for that kind of negativity? And I know some people, they may mean well, but then if they're constantly bringing you down, and especially if you're someone who's going through treatment, the last thing you want to do is start hearing, have that travel with you. Because I know when I was going through, when I'd go have my chemo visit, or we called it chemo lounge. We would go to chemo lounge, and everybody, you'd see all these women, men, everybody just being hooked up to the IVs and getting their treatment, and everybody's so positive. And there was one day this cancer patient came in, and she was just nasty and hateful, and the people that she was with that were trying to help her, she was just mean to. And it was, kind of got to a point where, some of the nurses had to step in, because everybody else is trying to be positive and trying to look ahead. And then you get this one thing that comes at you, and it just brings everybody down. So that was probably the biggest takeaway, is just, you have a choice. You don't have to stay in the negative.
Right. Yeah,
Purge
exactly.
it.
It gives you
I mean, that
gives
was
you
what we did.
perspective, and it makes you realize that what you spend your time doing or around is important to your day-to-day life. I mean, you don't want to spend it in a negative world. Just stick to the positive, and really focus and engulf your world in positivity, man. I think that's a great thing
Right.
to tell everybody about. I mean, especially anybody who's watching that might be going through breast cancer, just keep that in mind. Those are really good words of wisdom from a 12-year cancer-free Vanessa right here in the house. Woohoo! That's right. All right, girl, we're going to get
Woohoo!
on with the show. We've got Michelle coming up next, but I want to thank you so much, Vanessa, for joining. And, we don't ever really get a chance to chat that much, especially in lockdown 2020, not really out and about or whatever. But it's so good to see you and chat again, and catch up, and be able to share your story with the masses out there. So thank you so much for taking your time out. And I will see you over there at Survivors Rock, a breast cancer can stick it community, the Facebook group. See you over there, all right?
Great.
You,
Thanks,
you bet.
April.
Take care,
Appreciate
girl.
you.
That's right, guys. That was Vanessa Man rocking the house here with us this evening. So I'm so thankful.